Time for the main event. Ilya Ruderman is a type designer, a graphic designer, and an instructor who lives and works in Barcelona. He graduated from Moscow State University of the Printing Arts and got his MA degree in type design from the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. Ilya will explore the origins of Cyrillic, its historical evolution, and the forces that shaped its development. Ilya will focus on the features that make Cyrillic such a unique writing system and discuss the challenges and opportunities that it presents to type designers today. Ilya warned me that he will show over 200 slides today. Buckle up, kids. We're going pedal to the metal. Take it away, Ilya.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you very much for beautiful introduction, and it's my honor to be invited here. I know of both platforms, Typewest and Letterform Archive, for many, many years, and I congratulate Letterforms with the 10-year anniversary. It's that's a milestone. It's a wonderful achievement. We don't have much time, guys, and I'm sorry I'm gonna be rushing tonight. Sorry, for me it's night because I'm in Barcelona and we have a late evening here. While I'm on this slide and here in my keynote, you can see how many slides I'm skipping tonight. A lot, but still I prepared the presentation of around 200 slides and we're gonna go quickly. I will start with introducing myself quickly, showing everything major in a way I did and we did together with my partner in Cyrillic area. And then my main focus will be about the history. It's kind of a brief review of the history of Cyrillic, but I'll point you where to look and how to start to think about this writing system. We're not going to talk about languages, we're not going to talk about countries, but it's more about the writing system, what it brings and what it does. Quickly about myself, yes, I'm living in Barcelona. This is my two beautiful kids. They older now, but I am always starting my lecture with gratitudes. This is my original teacher in Moscow Academy. His name is Alexander Tarbeyev, and he's a brilliant person who opens the type for quite a lot of young people and keep doing that for ages. And it's mainly our teacher, I would say, for quite a lot of common type designers. I always very grateful to Christian Schwartz. We started to collaborate in 2008 and still collaborating together. And I've been doing Cyrillic for quite a lot of typefaces for commercial type, but not only. And Christian is a crazy, generous person. I've specifically selected these young photos of Just and Eric because I remember them like that. We met when I was studying in typing media 20 years ago, and those guys had changed my life and my perspective on viewing how, the type design in general, importance of the coding in it, and it's also an honor to know this people. You may know me, or if you know me, we're running a font store, Cyrillic centered, called Type Today, with its another version called Tomorrow Type Today, and we one of the few who publish something. So we publish interviews, we publish some useful manuals, and I'm welcoming you to join and see and read our journal. It's always all articles translated in English and published in English, and it's quite a lot of interesting articles there. I'm also welcome you to our Instagram. Another version of our store is a Tomorrow collection, which is dedicated to experimental typefaces and crazy typefaces, display typefaces, always with Cyrillic, always supporting Cyrillic, as we believe that Cyrillic deserves to be a wonderful platform for experimentation like everything else. And also, you may know our another Instagram account, which shares a lot of young designers' portfolios and studios, and it's a great platform which is sharing posts with everybody, with its huge audience. This is my main partner. We working together. We know each other since academy, Moscow Academy in 90s, I would say. Yuri is my best friend, my business partner. We started our foundry, which called Custom Fonts. And I'll quickly show you a couple of projects just to go to also illustrate how it can be a wonderful beginning. So even though we had a crazy experience in custom fonts before that, for 10 years, I was mainly busy with the custom fonts. Our first retail font, a font for the public, open for everybody, was a Casimir typeface. It's very related to our subject because our inspiration came from 100-year book published in the beginning of 20th century, and the book was interesting for us because we noticed quite a lot of kind of strange things happening with letter shapes, and it was an inspiration for us to play around. So we started with something basic, but then we added a set of irregular forms and crazy forms and strange forms, even for our view and our eyes. And they're surprisingly, that typeface became super successful. Quite a lot. It was published exactly in the moment where it was needed, and right after we never thought to extend it, but after 1 year working on this typeface, we found ourselves working on its text version. Even we never thought about it and never planned it. Here you can see actually the difference between the display and the text. You see the differences in contrast, the differences in proportions, and some details, roundings, the sizes of some elements like bold terminals. And we, of course, published a quite big family supporting quite a lot of different types of typography and their typographical features, and that was also wonderful experience for us. Several more projects just to show you how we kind of started to experiment, and that this project in particular was called even CSTM Experimental #1, where we kind of tried to collect, it was published several years ago, but we were trying to collect the mainstream decisions, design craziness in a way, braveness, but also experimenting in Cyrillic with that, which is quite a rare thing to do. The second project was mainly Yuri's project, but we published it together. It's a crazy combination of different styles combined together to work in harmony in typography, where everything is crazy, but in a different way. That was the beginning of our interest in the Georgian typography. Besides one crazy writing system like Cyrillic, we found ourselves being in a deep production nowadays of Georgian, which is very beautiful, very original. It's different from a vertical metrics, everything. It's another story. You might be interested in that, but supposedly this typeface was originally planned to work like that, like on the right in the text, highlighting some words and typography much more powerful than we normally would expect from bold and italic. Another beautiful experiment, and it's kind of connected to the our topic, was an idea of blending in a way the black letter design on the top with, pardon, on the bottom with Ustav writing, all Cyrillic writing on the top, and what would happen if those constructions would blend in the middle in something crazy and out of reality in a way. And it's working well. It was super popular again when it was published. Quite a lot of this was the designs for Typomania. It's one of their used to be a festival of design and typography, and they've been using this variable. It was the beginning of variable fonts when it was published, 2016 or 17. And since then we keep going. We kept going. We keep publishing an interesting project and experimenting, always finding ourselves in finding something interesting to work with, to challenge ourselves with. But we always producing Cyrillic. Cyrillic is our main goal. Sometimes we doing something as crazy as this. This is the typeface, which is still only published on future fonts called Zhivov, and mainly dedicated to you will find it very familiar, but it's project dedicated to the historical writing, Ustav writing, but with the idea what would happen if that writing would be evaluated to the 21st century through the different styles and stylistics and came to something which would work much more natural, much more harmonious than it used to be, with the crazy contrast. And you will see how it very interesting project. Another again crazy project is Black Slanted. It's also Yuri's experimental on how far you can go with slanting stuff. Also on the territory of Latin, Georgian, and Cyrillic. Where is the border of readability? Where is the line where we can't really understand what is written there, but still with a very sharp and bright stylistic. Besides that, besides of publishing something ourselves, we are very much busy with helping others to produce Cyrillic as perfect as we can. This is just part of the collection we did over the years. It's quite a lot of different projects by different foundries, and it's always it's a great honor again, because you're learning a lot by working with someone else's files, by following the logic of original Latin design and trying to find the Cyrillic which would work perfectly with that, keeping in mind that, and we're going to talk about it is all this evening, that Cyrillic is not one particular language, but it's different traditions, and you need to remember that. And it's challenging, and when it was started, it was very. Actually, I was starting with a huge project Nutraface. That was my first, and it's a lot of styles, a lots of production, and it was still every project comes to this kind of extension. It's a beautiful and interesting thing to work with. All right, 11 minutes. That's wonderful timing. So it's everything. Now you know a little bit about my background and what I'm kind of interested in. Mainly Cyrillic is my passion. I dedicated 20 years of it to Cyrillic and populating the Cyrillic. I really believe that the more designers would play with Cyrillic, the more benefits we will all have in typographically. Why am I'm doing that? Because when we started with Yuri, and we've been in the same course, same year, I remember the times in late 90s where we had one typeface published with new Cyrillic. So it was so rare. It was so unique when something new will come out with Cyrillic. Nowadays, it's impossible even to follow. In the beginning of Type Today, we've been publishing selection of the kind of the best Cyrillic published during 1 year. And quite often after 3 years, we realize that it's not possible. We can't really collect everything anymore. It's hundreds and hundreds beautiful designs coming. And I'm super happy about it. I'm super grateful that the richness of the writing system, the amount of designs is nowadays is so big and it's so beautiful. So let's talk about the Cyrillic. It's going to be a little bit heavy. I'll try to also go through that as quickly as possible to make it lighter. So I don't remember where I took this image from, but it will give you some kind of understanding that we are speaking of also quite big territory, representing quite a lot of different countries, that those countries sometimes are by historical or political belongs to completely different traditions and cultures. And that's beautiful. The Cyrillic is huge. Nowadays, we, together with our partners at TypeJournal, .ru, our friends, we did a research and we're gonna publish the results quite soon, where we collected 120 languages, living languages, not historical or some languages which are not in use anymore, but real languages which people are still speaking on this territory, huge territory. Yes, sometimes there are some major languages with millions of speakers, but there are some languages with just 10 speakers, and it's super hard sometimes even to find the correct way of drawing a specific character, specific letter, which needed to support this super tiny language with 10 speakers, and it's very scientific in a way, research that we're still running. And the history of Cyrillic starts with a completely different tradition and graphical implementation. It's called a glagolitic or glagolic writing system. And just to give you a general overview how it looks like, I will show you a couple of slides showing that. It's a lot of round shapes in it, and it's still some shapes are turning, flipping, rotating. But already there, we're finding some of the shapes like two on the right side, which remain the same. We're still using it the same way. So one of them, F, comes probably from Greek. Another one, Sh, comes from probably Hebrew. But they still remain the same, representing the same sounds like they used to. It's not perfectly correct image, but there were still upper cases, lower cases in glagolitic. Glagolitic is a very interesting writing system which survived almost till the middle of 20th century, thanks to Croatia. Croatia was the main country which were continuously using this writing system. And it's a lot of manuscripts, and it's ages, it's centuries where people were using this, and a lot of books been written. It was published and printed, and we recognize even the European typography culture, with illustration, decorations, ornaments, and everything. So it was basically part of their the whole Europe culture. This is a very important Bashkir tablet, also from Croatia, around 12th century, beginning of 12th century. And it's a beautiful piece where everything is very visible, all characters, and it's readable. People still can read it. But again, it survived for centuries, and this writing system was also transformed with the historical stylistics like black letter, where everything was more condensed, more pressed, and more contrast, writing more vertical proportions, and everything like that. Why are we speaking about glagolitic? Why is it important? Quite a lot of historical manuscripts can be found containing both. On the left side, the same text on the left side is Cyrillic, on the right side is glagolitic. Why is it, for some of the historians and archaeologists, it's important to kind of understand which one of them was the first one. For me personally, from modern type design, it's not really extremely important. I don't really mind if one of them is the oldest one and another one is younger one. I don't really care. It's beautiful and it's there. It's wonderful. We can learn something from that. But yes, it's quite visible that quite a lot of, for instance, on the page on the right, on top of their page is Cyrillic, on the bottom of the page is glagolitic. So it's interesting how people theoretically could read in both writing systems probably the same languages. So the language behind it is the same, but graphical representation is different, and it's very interesting. And again, to prove the point, this is nowadays in Zagreb Cathedral decoration with glagolitic writing. It's I remember being in Zagreb and I even saw the graffiti tag written with glagolitic. So there are still people who can read, or it still has a meaning, which is beautiful, because in some other countries where it's was part of their historical background, it's not there anymore, and it's very beautiful. And that's why this very modern typeface created by my classmate at Type and Media and my good friend Nikola Jurek, Croatian famous type designer, dedicated to glagolitic. It's very beautiful. It's very modern in a way, and when you see that those shapes in a modern, sharp design, it looks refreshing and very interesting graphically as well. So there still can be some future in this, in keep using this writing system. The same date, the oldest artifacts dated the same 863, and that's why it's still kind of a mystery which one of those writing systems been using longer. Just to give you a quick kind of review and the best representation. So shapes have been changing quite often. So glagolitic script, we can say like on the fourth line here that those triangle shapes with some kind of decorations on the sides look kind of maybe familiar, but in theory it doesn't really matter. But what matters is that the second column and the third column represents basically the starting point of Cyrillic. So Cyrillic, appearance of Cyrillic on this such a huge territory, very much dedicated to the point where the people who've been living there, united by some political force, been deciding which religion to choose. And it was option to choose a Catholic religion, Orthodox, or even Jewish, Judaism, and yeah, I think those three were the main ones. And by that time, by 9th century, Byzantine Empire was the most powerful empire in the neighborhood. So basically, the country decided to choose in their favor of. Sorry, I'm losing my Sorry. The country decided to choose Orthodox Church and Orthodox beliefs, and because of that, Byzantine, Istanbul, Constantinople became super powerful culturally, because a lot of books would come from that religion connection, quite a lot of inspiration, and because of the connection between the Constantinople and Byzantine Empire to the Greek culture. Greek uncial was the starting point of their early days Cyrillic. While for you guys, those are basically historical handwritings. They're stylistic of how people on the different territories would write calligraphically, manuscripts and everything. And we know it like a history of evolution of the script to nowadays and times and their printing type. Basically, it's we can say that Cyrillic stuck in around the fourth line of uncial, and uncial Greek writing was for centuries the only one possible way of writing. Just to remind you how it looked in the early Greek uncial, it's one of the manuscripts with it, and it's beautiful. It's very Greek, and it's one page in the historical evolution of their Latin design in a way. And this is the comparison, for instance, on the one side is the Greek uncial, on the right side is Cyrillic ustav. And of course, there are two different languages behind it, but the shapes, the proportions, the way of writing, the contrast, everything is basically the same. And this is how it's basically started in the 9th century. Then we see some manuscripts from 10th century. Even we can decide and choose or find on those manuscripts a different typographical representation of a body text or headline typeface or decoration insults and so on and so on. But still, it's kind of evolution of uncial inside the Greek uncial. More different manuscripts, and I'm going to show you a little bit more just to give you to remind you that in those times, the early times, everything were depending on the skills of the calligrapher, writer, copier, because quite often it's just the copies and copies and copies of Bible and religion-related texts for the church and this kind of ceremonies and everything. Even those marks and everything, they dedicated to how to sing those in the church psalms and everything. So more different from different times. Images of different artifacts for you to notice. Basically, all of them are different, but there are some kind of relevant amount of familiarity of how people would write. So they kind of been inspired by the same origin of Greek uncial, and it was a main tradition of writing those books. It wasn't possible to write it anyhow else. And it goes over the centuries. Next, kind of it's a side effect of it. Somewhere in the 11th century, this why is the beach mark? Because archaeologists started to find the beach mark letters, documents. I remember in the late 90s, it was three of them, just three. Now it's hundreds of them, and they still try digging out new ones. They representing this way ustav writing without any pens, but just the skeletons, and people were sending messages, and it's translated its old language, and there are some historians who are really studying that. Because it's became the thing. and different type of culture and different kind of discoveries. But that's basically the same Ustav writing, just written differently. And then after pretty much like 300 years, somewhere in the beginning of 14th century, the new technology, the new way of making the tools, the new paper, the speed of writing changed. So here it's called semi-Ustav. Basically, it's the evolution of the original Ustav, but we really can see the difference. So on top here is the original Ustav, more uncial, Greek uncial flavor. On the bottom here is something much more narrower, sometimes angled, like on this example, and it's sometimes using much more simpler constructions, for instance. And it's a huge period of semi-Ustav writing where people would notice for many, for a couple of more centuries, not many, couple more. Another side story. Apologies for Russian text here, but it's more about the image. It's a wonderful research which done, I think 3 years maybe already, or 2 years ago by two designers, Oleg Matsuev and Maria Skopina, and you can find once I think we recorded some kind of video interview with them, so you can find them on YouTube talking more about this research. But this is like a Nobel Prize in historical discoveries, I would say. While everybody been thinking for many years of how to actually to write this kind of Ustav writing correctly, what is their technique, what is their logic, how we should move the pens and rotate the hand, and which kind of instruments we should use and everything. And Oleg and Maria decided to dedicate their research to this subject, and the discovery was very interesting. So they started with collecting some instructions from different books, like this one, or this one, or this one. And then they started to look on the manuscripts, and as many as possible, noticing different things. Like, for instance, here in the middle, the character which very asymmetrical, like one side is much lighter, second is much heavier, some kind of stranger thicknesses on this artifact as well, or something is definitely happening with the movements in these two characters C and O. And they started to kind of organize this understanding everything what they're looking at. Of course, there are some group of manuscripts which belongs to one movement, calligraphical writing as we understand it in a Western way. 30 degree, not really much rotations of the hand there, and of course quite a lot of possibilities to receive a still completely different results depending on the way of writing, or thicknesses. For instance, if you write it a little bit bigger, your letters became lighter optically. When you write them with heavier pen or in small sizes, it became bolder, heavier. And of course, if you rotate your hand differently, you receive a completely different flavor. Like on the left is Ustav writing, semi-Ustav in the middle, and something which looks for us maybe a little bit more Arabic because of the contrast, how, or Hebrew, Jewish, I don't know. So quite a lot of, but even in those type of writing, it's noticeable that some characters like O, P, C are written in much more highlighted way. Like somehow it was important to be noticeable for those characters. So they've been kind of accented with extra movements. Or some characters were written with rotation, or this kind of triangles as a designs, or real interesting movement of their stems. So they organize those thoughts and their discoveries in a quite understandable example, like, okay, we can write letter M with 4 stems. It's easy, can be done. Then in other group of manuscripts, they notice that it's visible that something else is happening. Like we can see the tiny serifs. We can see that the thicknesses are really different from kind of expected the same movements, or in some cases, some of the shapes, some characters became super light, extremely light, noticeably lighter than everything else. Or even things like that, when you can even see how their 2 movements overlapping not equally, and they're with a kind of a serif highlighting them. Or the color, you can see that the color overlapping on top of each other, like leaving in the middle something heavier. Again, they started to organize those things, those discoveries, collected the discoveries, and then suddenly to write M, you need 10 stems, 10 ductus, 10 movements to write 2 triangles, and basically. Or for letter J, which is here in the middle, like how many? 14, you need 14 movements to do that. Crazy, right? Then there were another set of original manuscripts which look as beautiful as this one, for instance, where you can see that it's something extra happening, like it's basically elevated double. And now for a letter M, as beautiful as this one, you need 17 movements. Congratulations, calligraphers. And now you need to spend 17 movements to write one letter. And it's everything there like that. Basically, the letter on the left is a K, for instance, which is very beautiful shape in a way, kind of representing the triangle. All right. So they started to collect these instructions for writing correctly in this kind of stylistic, and it's beautiful. But how far is the calligraphy from this? And this is basically in a way, the main idea of this research and the novelty of it. And it's actual proof of the way that and the idea which I would hope that you will bring home with you today. Cyrillic historically is less about how the letter forms were written. And this is kind of strange for us because we know a lot about this calligraphical background of the letter shapes in Western Latin typography, the importance of that. Even in Arabic and the different writing systems, it's very important how the contrast going, how the hand is moving. Everything is super important for that. But Cyrillic historically and traditionally is much more about how the letter was drawn. So it's less written, more drawn. It's less about the movement, but more about the controlling shape, the forming the shape. You basically kind of creating the shape with the tool called pen, but you can rotate your hand, you can spend as many movements as you need. You can spend a lot of time on it. And that's basically the main idea of this lecture today. I want you to remember this idea, and I hope it will open some new understanding for you about the Cyrillic. Here is another reminder of the project Yuri did, dedicated to blending the black letter with Ustav writing. Part of the challenge was coming up with Latin, which never been present back then. But that's another story. But let's continue with the history. We still have some time to do that, and it's still quite a lot of interesting things ahead. Another style which is happening historically pretty much the same time is the style which we selecting separately, which called scoropis. In translation, it means like a speedy writing, but in reality, it's civil writing. It's letters people were sending to each other. It's already different centuries. The pen's much more flexible. People were more freely writing. There is still Ustav writing in the skeletons. There is still kind of memory of everything the century been bringing to this day, but it's still it adds a lot of swashes, freedom of writing, and it's in a way, if you're familiar with the style civilite, it's beautiful as that because it's kind of crazy contrast, crazy movements. This one of my favorite slides because it shows like the collection of the skeletons and constructions of the same shapes, same letters, sometimes in the same manuscript you can find. Like people were really playing with that, and it's the beauty of this writing and this style of writing. More examples, or just to give you kind of the idea, it was present for also a couple of centuries. It was changing. It also was very personal. People were writing letters like that, and of course, it depended on a different writer, in personality of it, and the moment. Somewhere in the end of 15th century, we also, I'm selecting here just to give you the concept of it. Another style called vyaz appears. It's a very interesting blocky typography which been using for headlines in the books. Normally it would be headline, but not only in the decorations, or quite often in the churches you can find a line, ornamented line of all names of apostles, for instance. And it's a very interesting way of kind of blocking a very concentration of the meaning, but it was the beautiful constructions, quite playful. You can really enjoy organizing the space, especially manually. And again, quite a lot of slides just dedicated to show you how interesting it could be, how it's also changed during the centuries. And it's extremely modern in a way. If you look from now a modern perspective, where black letters, if you see the tattoo on a modern person, it's a black letter. I really believe that this guys is really could be doing the same thing, because it's a beautiful way of writing. Different artifacts can be found in the cemeteries as well, in ornamentation. Have a huge collection of ustav, of vyaz panels, and this kind of this one of my favorites, because collecting all of them, at some point I just realized that I still can, those are names, I still can read them. And that's surprising, because my brain is not really reading the content of this block, but kind of understanding the length of it, picking the first letter, the last letter, and guessing what kind of name could it be. And it's to observe how this is happening in your mind. It's beautiful. Like every time I'm seeing this image, it's a miracle which happens in my brain. How quickly I recognize the name, how quickly I can read it. I'm sorry, we probably can't, but trust me, it's wonderful. More examples, just to show you. And this is the modern project by my friend Varia Goncharova, who's been couple years ago, I think. She was graduated from Nancy with such a beautiful project dedicated to this kind of way of organizing the typographical line. And it's very beautiful. I'm looking forward to this typeface to be published, and it's very interesting. We still have some time, and I still have some slides to show. Pretty much we're done with the kind of the background of the history, and then the printing happens. Of course, you remember the dates, that it's even on my scale on the bottom, like 100 years before the printing happened in Europe, but to the Cyrillic market, we can say that it's appeared much more later. The first artifacts were normally would be printed somewhere else. So basically, Krakow in modern Poland was one of their capital of printing. And let's stop on this, for instance, example, and understand how that would be going. So basically, the client somewhere deep in Cyrillic territory, somewhere on the east, would be looking for another copy of the Bible, for instance. And the client heard, it's probably from the church, some episcopal or some kind of monastery would be interested in making more copies of the Bible. That's kind of before it would be the people writing down, but they heard that there is a technique of copying the Bible much more cheaper, much more faster. So they would took the original hard copy of the written Bible with manuscripts, with handwriting, hand drawings of Cyrillic, and they would send it to the printing place. It could be Krakow or some other European big city with a lot of printing happening already, and basically they wouldn't expect anything else but the copy, and that's why for like many decades after the inventing of the printing, the first printing in Cyrillic basically were copying over different times of the previous original designs. And sometimes that would be Ustav writing, basically the Greek uncial, semi-Ustav, Scorpis, Vice, and etc. So it could be like randomly anything. And that's crazy in a way, because knowing everything and seeing everything, you see that couple of characters comes from there, couple of shapes comes from there. Here they didn't know what to do, so they placed the original Latin design, and it's becoming a soup of different designs happening on the same page, happening in the same designs, and they all doing something else, and it's beautiful, of course, but it's a mess in a way. More examples just to give you the understanding how it was happening. And you see like very decoration, for instance. Decoration was very, we know this decoration from a lot of Latin early printed books. Basically, they would print the decorations and they would put something in the middle with Cyrillic letters, which is also beautiful, of course. Francis, Karina, we don't really have a lot of time for that, but again, familiar decoration. Now you recognize the base as a blocky typography in the middle, and then the mix of different type designs happening in the 4 lines of text. Some shapes are coming from Ustav, some shapes are coming from Latin, diuresis sometimes, etc. The official first printer in Cyrillic was Ivan Fedorov, who I believe been printing in Moscow. Some of the designs, again, he did the same. Basically, he also was hired to make a copy, so he did the same with a little bit more understanding, more cohesively, but basically doing the same. But he was definitely much more familiar with the script. more examples for you to look at of his printing, different printing from Moscow. This was the first newspaper. This is already beginning of 18th century. And then let's super quickly talk about the Peter the Great, that reform, and how it affected everything. Gonna go faster. So basically, by the beginning of 18th century, the educated people were familiar with the Latin, of course, with Cyrillic relations, how this is a representation sometimes of the same sounds. But at the same time, the variety of different designs, the different shapes, different constructions representing the same, it could be super confusing for a young child studying all of that all together. So Peter basically was very, as you probably heard, he was very inspired by Dutch culture. He'd been traveling to Amsterdam a lot, and in 2017, 8, he started this reform of Latinizing Cyrillic. Basically, that was the end of everything we were discussing before, partly, and reforming. Sometimes, which is interesting, sometimes he was really removing characters from the use, which is crazy if you think about it from modern perspective. Like, can you imagine you typing down without W, or W without K, or something like that? That's interesting. So on the left is without his marks, and on the right is basically his marks. So he was like, our director, like, I don't like this design. No, let's not do that. It's not us. I don't know how he did it. All right, and the outcome was 2 typefaces, 2 casts. In that time, it was a metal casts, and those 2 casts were tried on a different books, different examples, and basically combined together became the history. And this is interesting comparison between basically the copy feed of the previous way of printing, previous typography tradition, and the new one. By the legend, the printers came to him saying, like, hey, Tsar, we need to cancel this reform. It's not working. See how many letters we can put in. We could put before, and now it's just not working for us. Let's cancel. It's a bad idea. But no, he was tyrann and everything, so he really insisted. And I'm jumping closer to the final slides and conclusion, as my time was almost over. So basically, historically, after this reform, it was a very powerful reform. Of course, it was a cultural reform, because Peter really wanted to this huge empire by the time to be part of the European Western civilization, and open, and looking more like it. And that was basically the philosophy as we understand nowadays behind it. He wanted to really be kind of much closer to the Latin than it used to be. He succeeded. I'm not questioning anything here. We living in consequences of that, but it needed time, and time happened. So over the decades after that reform, basically the amount of, imagine you suddenly have just 2 typefaces, type 1 and type 1 and type 2, and that's it. You need richness of typography, you need much more different designs, you need italics, you need etc., etc., and that required time. So 70 years after that, but the printing is still quite sad, quite poor, and sometimes it's very kind of visible how people were creating the shapes, like some of the shapes here been created from Latin with adding some of the shapes from each other to just represent the needed letter. And it's interesting to observe those. And if you remember the beginning of my presentation with Casimir typeface, that was partly the origin of our design idea behind it, because we were living in this kind of historical interesting artifacts where people were kind of constructing, playing, making, like using the shapes as a construction to represent the Cyrillic shapes, and it's interesting. More specimens. This is a historical anecdote which I really like. Of course, you know Badoni, and by the time it was right after the Napoleon fail, and Alexander the Great, the Russian Tsar who won against Napoleon, he was traveling in Europe. He was enjoying himself after the huge victory. So he came to Italy, and Badoni was very happy to present to the Tsar the cast of Cyrillic of his famous designs. So basically the metal of letters. Alexander was very grateful. He said thank you, of course. He was a polite, well-educated person. And then basically they put it in a storage. So it was a treasury. So Tsar asked to put all that metal letters in the boxes, in the storage. Now it's in a museum, but they never been in use. And that's very, very, in a way, Russian way of dealing with treasures. They never been in use, so they never been visible for anybody else except the Tsar. Okay, we continue jumping over during the time. Some more beautiful designs are printed, some new publishing houses inside the country. They've been exploring. What is important? The important is that by the 1917, by the time of the revolution, we can safely say that the richness of Cyrillic typography was on the same level as European. It was a race of advertising, as you remember. For instance, like this is the whole book I have here, crazy thick, full of European advertising. So we had the same amount of advertising in Cyrillic in the Russian Empire. And then revolution happens. And what's happening with all that rich designs and richness? The majority was melted to the bullets. Revolutionaries, new power, new country required the bullets. And basically, out of the historians saying about 2,000 different designs, different casts of metal survived. They created the commission. Commission was selecting the designs by their ideology, meaning, historical association, whatever, quite a lot of different aspects. And they selected a little bit more than 30, and the rest was melted. So the richness of everything we've been discussing before basically disappeared. And just the standard, so it was a standardized, and the standard was about like 31, 32 typefaces, designs for very specific purposes. There was also reform of the spelling. It's not the best representation of nowadays, but I like this image of a beautiful Trajan Pro by Robert Slimbach and Carol Twombly. The orange letters represents their identical characters, so is the Latin, and it's kind of the goal of the reform of Peter the Great. So making Cyrillic harmoniously on a huge territory of Russian Empire at the time, making it by, in a way, killing destroying the previous. Losing my voice again because it's a sad moment. Okay, so graphically, we are very much connected. Cyrillic is a writing system. Like I'm always saying to the students, Cyrillic nowadays is a system probably much closer to the Latin than anything else. Even Greek, which is historically much more connected with Latin, nowadays graphically is more separate, more original in a way. And Cyrillic is much more closer. I don't remember why I put this slide. It was about my research about, I kind of invented the way how to look on the color of typography in my master diploma project. I kind of invented this way of looking on a different typography from the perspective of simple shapes. And this way you can compare different languages, how the different forms influence that. It's nowadays, all right? So basically the conclusion, last couple slides. What I want you to learn today is basically been said. Historically, Cyrillic is much more pointed pen friendly writing system, because pointed pen historically and graphically allows you to rotate hand a lot, which is much more closer to drawing. Of course, you can write Cyrillic with a broad nib, and it will require some tricks, like a couple of shapes here. You see, you need to rotate hand like almost negatively, like -45, like in some places, -10, just to make that movement thicker. And that's, again, historically happened because of the reform and the way of creating those shapes in 18th century, which nothing was connected to the calligraphy at the time. But that would be probably my last slide for you, reminding you of that research. I was crazy inspired when that research was published, because I personally was looking on manuscripts for ages without asking myself the simplest question: how this beautiful letter came, was drawn, was written. And that's crazy, because I would notice as well, I would recognize those tiny serifs. You don't need even zoom in to notice them, because letters quite often quite big. But this is the illustration that it's still a lot of interesting discoveries in the history. It's a lot of interesting things which we can ask ourselves, like how it was done, why it was done, why it's like that, and what does that mean. And it's very beautiful. And I believe this Cyrillic discovery can teach you something in the writing or designs you are working on right now. Thank you so much. I hope it was it took me 1 hour. All right, I'm happy with that. But I think I can stop here, and we still have some time for questions.
Woo! Thank you so much, Ilya. That was an amazing tour
Apologies, I
through
don't know what
history.
happened with my voice, but I'm kind of...
Whenever anybody has to talk for an hour, it takes a toll. I know. I've been there. That was fantastic. I learned so much. We have questions.
Wonderful.
Let's see.
Let's...
So Boris asks, Boris has been a real champ in the chat, I have to say. Boris asks, Ilya, is it possible to buy your fonts?
Of course, it's
Tell
possible
us.
to buy. Our fonts are available on Type today. As I said in the beginning, on Future fonts. So I type network in Adobe fonts everywhere. Yes, you
Okay.
can find us. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Now you know where to put those hard-earned rubles.
Yep.
Okay, and then Dominica asked the question which Boris has partially answered, but Dominica says, if possible, I would love to get more information on the beautiful Greek uncial or information on where or how to search about it.
Actually, it's a lot of historical books which were published by different publishing houses. You can easily find a lot of information about this part of the history, which is beautiful compared to the amount of books which you can find on the Cyrillic side of it. We are lacking of good books, historical books, and there I'm dreaming of the times where we had so much sources. Luckily, about the Greek, it's a huge amount of books which were published there, putting it in a context, historical context, or dedicated to that particular research. Europe Union, I don't know why I'm saying that, but historically, in my opinion, Europe Union as an organization helped a lot because quite a lot of the Greek community, because historically every company who wants to be present in Europe Union nowadays require the support of Greek, support of Cyrillic, and we feel it, and I believe Greek colleagues are feeling that as well. So that custom segment of the industry is helping publishing books, publishing materials. I know that Parachute Greek Foundry been very active and publishing quite a lot. They have a special journal separate which are dedicated to general typography and the Greek typography as well. There are some interesting movements in the Greek community as well, dedicated to making the Greek more original and less copied from the Latin or adapted to fit the Latin. And that's beautiful. I think it's there is a petition, I believe, and I'm sharing those beliefs. I think it's very important. But answering the question about Unsal, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm struggling choosing one book or one source for that. It's a lot.
Okay, let's see. Milosh asks, what would you say are the challenges Cyrillic typefaces face today in a digital context?
That's an interesting question because they're being present there professionally for I'm afraid to say 20 years. I see that those challenges are really changing. Like every time you're looking from this perspective on the writing system and you see how different those challenges are. I remember the times, and that was in the beginning, where the amount of um, new designs created without enough respect to the history of Cyrillic was so powerful that people were really afraid that they will affect the way Cyrillic looks like. If you imagine, for instance, the power of Arial. Arial is super powerful typeface because it's the most common used typeface on the planet. And imagine a mistake made in Arial. Imagine the one character which for most majority of us looks all right, but for this particular writing system people or language people is wrong. But after the quote of Susanna Lichko about we getting more familiar with the typefaces, I'm rephrasing, but basically it's starting to change the way we getting familiar with that mistake becomes the rule. After that mistake, quite a lot of designs were drawn and created wrongly, and it became just affected the way the shapes changed. Nowadays, but answering the question about nowadays, Cyrillic nowadays, oh man, uh, uh, I just right before the war, I was really had a feeling that Cyrillic is a kind of like the fashion forward looking graphically, like it's a modern to use Cyrillic. Like quite a lot of fashion brands started to put the t-shirts with Cyrillic, and it started to be kind of fancy to be with some crazy word written in Cyrillic even without understanding what it is. And I was happy because it kind of connected me with that movement, because I feel Cyrillic the same way. Unfortunately, the war changed a lot. I don't know what the most challenges of Cyrillic nowadays, to be honest. We need this war to end, and then we will look on that on the other side.
Great answer. It does remind me of like the scribal spelling mistakes that then got turned into the new spelling. It's
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, Aditi asks, this is a bit more general, but if I want to study the history of a region's lettering, calligraphy, and type, where do I start? I've noticed that Europe is a bit better documented in terms of typography, but I'm from India and we're growing. But as a student, says Aditi, I get overwhelmed. And then Aditi says, also, I really admire the way to analyze different language typefaces that you invented. It feels ingenious and brings a why didn't I think of that to mind. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aditi. It's hard to me to compare the traditions. Europeans are, of course, in Europe there are quite beautiful libraries and museums even dedicated to the writing systems. I know that in India it's a huge tradition, and it's 1,000 years of it. So. Mm, I'm not in a good place to compare the education between, I don't know, States and Europe, India, and different places. I'm familiar with just particular ones. I'm part of the type in media family, the Hager. I'm happy to be back there with my Cyrillic workshop each year, and they're uh, kind of paying back to my home academy, my respectfully, and it's a huge amount of beautiful libraries. Leiden is like one of the libraries with a huge department of type dedicated to typography and manuscripts, with artifacts collected globally. I'm familiar with that. Uh, uh, Antwerpen with their Plantain Museum. It's a unique opportunity to see the huge printing house at work, basically, with its own archives. I remember when I was a student, we had an excursion to Einsheim typography, which are nowadays is it used to be private printing house, printing money for globally, not only for, it was the only printing house which were allowed to print euros, for instance. But they had a collection of um, mm, original metal. Uh, it's a beautiful books printed, and of course, it's one of the good places. I'm very in the Dutch culture, to be honest, typographically in this case. I don't know, did I answer it, but I'm sharing with everything I can, but it's very general question. Sorry. It's super hard to answer.
I just put TLDR, go to libraries and museums to start. Yeah. Jake asks, okay, we have two more questions and I bet we can knock them off. Jake asks, how do you evaluate the quality of Cyrillic glyphs in a font?
Um, it's wonderful question. It's that's the question which we're discussing every time. The thing is that Type Today as a store was originally dedicated to the our idea was that we will collect selectively, create a sort of boutique, selectively collect a collection of good quality Cyrillic typefaces for common use of nowadays, like very modern but very good quality things. And every time we're discussing the quality aspect or this personal aspect, like is this character can be drawn like that? Because as you saw in my lecture, for instance, it's a lot of discussions about, for instance, how to write Cyrillic K with diagonal construction, like the Latin one. Would people recognize that, and how people would recognize that in Cyrillic? Or you prefer different other constructions? And the more we see, it doesn't really matter anymore. I remember the times which the good typeface from bad typeface would be selected just by this one K. The Latin K in working in Cyrillic in a way would be the mark that it's not a good type. It's not a good quality Cyrillic. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter. Uh, it's so many different designs and so many different uh, less rules, more breaks, on more kind of experimental opening of those rules. Like we kind of pushing those boundaries, and that's wonderful. That's what I'm really enjoying these days. So I used to say, and I'm still saying this to my students, that I really believe that there are no bad typefaces on the planet. Like no one, like even the most terrible, from like a general perspective, like the most terrible typeface would be perfect for there would be one project where this typeface would be the best for it. So from this perspective, like from the perspective of the usage, I can imagine the usage of the most terrible typeface I can imagine, and it would be perfect there. And from this perspective, Cyrillic as well. So even the most terrible Cyrillic, there would be the message which would needed that voice. I know it's ironically maybe, but it's getting late here.
Somehow I find that adorable, Ilya, that there's
Thank you.
always a project for even the most terrible typeface out there.
Of
It
course.
gives one hope. Um, okay, it's bringing tears to my eyes. Um, finally, last question. Tazos asks, I loved how you traced the historical influences in Cyrillic type. If you had to design a future Cyrillic, what elements would you keep and what would you completely reinvent?
Yeah, I had a client looking for a blockchain flavor, blockchain like the crypto feeling, crypto voice, thinking in the same time about the future. Like it's a future currency, it's a future technology, it's the future economy and everything. And we still ended up looking on a retro. Uh, that's interesting how I'm keeping the longer I am in the profession, the longer I witness how everything is in the turning in the loops. So we ended up looking on somehow Formula One, F1, projects and there are kind of rebrandings there. Some I don't know, Blade Runner typography, Tron typography, this kind of crazy, like futuristic, over design voices in a way. But they all retro. They kind of renovated retro. So in this case, I think, and what I feel is that the new future is something, is a good forgotten past in a way. So basically, someone will find something, renovate it in a way again, and place it as a future, and it would work as a future as soon as we will see it this way. So it's possible. Probably that would be my answer. I'm sorry. Sorry for I'm trying to think loud here.
Yes. Sorry for saying the word blockchain on my lecture here. But I like the quote, the good future is a forgotten past.
I believe
Right?
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that whatever future Cyrillic typeface is, it revives that adorable little tse with the thorn in the middle. I love that one. I
Yeah.
don't know what. Um,
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you so much, Ilya. This was
Thank
an
you so much.
amazing talk.
Thank
Much
you for inviting
appreciated.
me. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Ciao.